I've had some lovely, lovely things happen to me this week. The comments that I've received on my videos recently, particularly, gosh, thank you to those people who took the time to comment and ask questions. You can't know what that means to me after 5 years of being Cassandra, where you're trying to give information and no one can understand it. You can't know. And so to have someone ask questions is wonderful. So as a musician, right, sometimes if you play in a pub and everyone's talking, I find that the piece of advice I was given was that you just play to the person who is listening. There'll be someone at the back of the room who is listening to you, who's trying to cut out all the shit around them and wants to hear you sing and play the guitar. So you play to them. And so I'm singing to you. So mass times acceleration equals force. So Newtonian world, you've got force and you've got mass accelerating. Okay? Happy. So equal force, if you put a force makes mass accelerate, and mass accelerating equals force. Invert them, yeah? And we're saying now that the mass accelerating, this is Einstein, mass energy equivalence if you like. So mass accelerating equals force, okay? Concept, Newtonian. Acceleration has two components. It can be in vector, with velocity increasing exponentially, or it can be in vector, increasing exponentially. And the vector one is, let's just simply take a rigid body, the model that I use throughout my work of just a sphere, a hollow sphere. It's not made of anything, it's just a hollow sphere, it's the rigid body. The rigid body has a surface. That surface is created from the expansion inside. And so from the center dot point, you have expansion, which is exponential velocity increase over a distance measured in meters, so increasing meters over equal durations of time. Here in the surface, you're going to have that a rigid body. So just take the rigid body, and now you're going to invert the surface. Look at the surface, and there's a rigid body there. So take the rigid body from the rigid body, the particle, and now you're going to invert that to a 720 twist until it's done a complete rotation. And you've had to do a 720 twist because the surface of that particle is also made from the particles of which you have. And so by going through the 720 twist, every ball bearing on the surface, every rigid body on the surface will roll relative to the motion that you've given to your rigid body, and it will invert. Its surface will also have inverted. Okay, trust me. And so you found a limit, right? Rigid bodies of surface. There's no point going any smaller. You just need rigid body and surface, and therefore I'm going to take the elastic of the planet, the mantle, because it's nice and big and we can really bring it into the real world straight away. So this boundary where these rigid bodies do this rotation of a 720 twist is the elastica of our planet, and it's the mantle. And currently it's running in the low energy male state, and you can tell because there's massive slabs of concretized slag, and those slabs just smashed together, and so that the buzzing effect, the piezoelectric buzz that's created, measures Planck's constant, is operating on that mantle. It's constricted by this concrete layers around it. Imagine it. So you've got the picture looks like the model of the planet that I drew. We have the beautiful, perfect sphere of rigid bodies of elastic tension. Each rigid body is held together to ones around it elastically through this motion of rotation of surface. And so what you get is a single surface, one side, assembled in the special torus shape of sphere with a vortex top and bottom, a venturi top and bottom. But the venturi bottom has a pocket axis that's flicked up to the top, and so there is a third axis of twist. But this is a single surface, so the sphere has got a hole in it in one side, and it's got a hole in it in the spindle at the top. The bottom one has closed, and the top one, because of the surface tension, it's closed the tension, and the top one is the top vortex, the pocket vortex, which should be exiting the bottom, is flicked up. And it's coming out the top somewhere in the major vortex. Can you see it? So you've got a major vortex now at the top. In there's a wandering pocket vortex that needs to be pushed up tight if it's going to stay on its magnetic attraction to the north, and the planet stays all in sync. To go back to the elastic of the planet, And see this idea of the rigid body of the surface is turning inside out, of mass accelerating. So suddenly it's the acceleration of the vector that is the force that creates mass. You've got a rigid body made of little rigid bodies. That's mass. Yeah, and you see it's a real entity, a real thing. It has mass. If it's real, it has mass. End of. Yeah? If it's in reality, the entity has mass. You just measure it using the correct units. And so begin now. Right. So force. You've got the idea that now that acceleration is actually the force. Mass is the arena where the acceleration takes place, and that equals force. And so, but what you get is a velocity in vector. So if you draw an exponential expansion, zoom, straight line out, infinite acceleration to the edge of the universe, infinite acceleration. It's there and it's there. If that surface goes through an inversion, at its limit, it will have an equal and opposite reaction inside. And that equal and opposite reaction will take place at the center, and that center will then fracture. And it will fracture as gobstopper layers of a spring sphere capillary action unfolding in layers. A single surface, because it's twisted about this single point, okay, of the fracture. So the fracture is heading towards the weak point where the major vortex and the pocket vortex live. That's where the fracture is going. North pole, yeah. So you've got the wandering vector axis, North Pole, and the true North Pole, major axis, set at the center, and you've got velocity. So it's velocity that's the force, do you see? So when you've got mass acceleration equaling force, you've now got acceleration as vector change. You've got mass as the result of vector change and the arena in which vector change takes place. That's a recursive loop, equaling force. Velocity, meters per second, c, variable. Yeah. And so there's the units of force and a number, c meters per second. And so then you can go to the center dot point, build the other units you need. The center dot point is the limit of entropy. That's capital S, meters to the 4, bending. And because it's S, end of entropy, limit of homogeneous temperature sphere. So the sphere has reached the limit of homogeneous temperature. The cold and the hot are at limit, and the thing breaks. You fractured it. But in the fracturing, there's additional energy added, and therefore a balance mechanism is created, and that's a membrane potential is created and closes the bottom axis of the torus. Can you see? So the model that I've drawn from Vitruvian Man of the eyeball that builds the eyeball shows that the base of the spring arc is a lens, and that lens is made from water, and that water has the surface tension of nothing. It's totally inviscid. Its Reynolds number is inviscid. All it has to hold itself together is the pi tensors, pi natural, pi elastic, and pi real. And you can create a lens in two ways, a male lens or a male-female lens. And so you have a convex lens where the outside of the lens is pi natural, the biggest one, 3.144, and then a 4 over root phi, and then the next one is pi elastic, and the next one is pi real. And so in the convex lens, you've got pi natural on the outside, pi real on the inside, and pi elastic, Archimedean pi, going between them. The membrane potential, the 3-point fixings. 3-point fixing of membrane potential makes it real. Insists on it being made into a real entity, membrane. And that's the male model when it's convex. And so you simply, when you assemble the setup, when we are heart-centered, so instead of men, there's no female alone. There's men alone, and there's male-female entity. And so male-female reality that we're going to step into just requires the square to just shift. Everything shifts like that. Watch. When you center to the heart, and the ripples line up, pin A and pin B, expansion points, now align at the same center dot point, not offset from each other. And that's all you're doing, that the two fixed points of the lever arms that I set up at the beginning, the two circles and the two fixed points, are the two fixed points of the yin-yang of the tau at the center that doesn't rotate, the tick. It goes tick, the arrow of time. And so you now just assemble them back together again, right at the end. The fixed points are one fixed point, but it has two mechanisms. And you can see they're out of balance now, and they're soon going to be in balance. And when they go in balance, this micro cracking of the spring arch of our conscious experience flicks the right way, so the cracking is going in the right direction. It's on the outside, and so the surface of the elastica is now the pristine elastica surface. Immediately the mantle of the planet will snap back. The elastica of the planet will snap back where it should be, around the inner core, and that the planet will breathe a sigh of relief and go back to being a flat planet with a firmament over the top of it. I tell you truly, my friends, this is where we go with this information. And go back to the Vitruvian Man model with a convex lens of the male model. The male female has concave, because the pyreal now flicks the other way. So you've got two bending moments. You've got bending moment in and bending moment out, and those were balanced by all the other action. But the simple force that creates it in the first place, the bending, just the bending, has two vectors, that way and that way. Yeah, open and closed. And so it flicks the other way and goes to a concave lens. That's the male-female lens. Can you see? And now the pi elastic is also in a chord, forms a chord. So it's a chord now. It forms a segment of the circle. Yeah. So it'll be stretched. We'll stretch pi elastic, and its value will change. The value of pi will change. Yeah. I don't know about how much, but we're definitely affecting the tail end of pi, because that's what we've been chasing all this time. What's at the tail end of pi? It's pi elastic. That's why it's irrational. You need to use the rational pi's, pi natural, which is irrational, but has a lovely repeating pattern with a solid modulus at the center of it, and pi real, which is absolutely rational. Just which way do you want pi real to point? So all men have to do, women can do nothing now, all men can do is choose empathy. Recognize the pain that the females go through once a month, and that's your fault because you choose to mess around with your cock. Leave it alone and let nature do what it wants to with our bodies. And I believe it'll be once a month, it'll make us hard, and that's when we have the sex. Yeah? And you don't corrupt your body to make your dick hard by having pornographic thoughts of any kind. Do not commit adultery in your head under any circumstances. That's it. That's the price males have to pay for their women to have a happy life, and for us to arrive at the end of this time and the beginning of the next one. Yeah? All from the journey of entropy, S meter 4, the unfurling of a sphere, as if a parchment. Okay, thank you for coming back to my lectures. We'll see you after the break.